I am Marilyn Gibb Rice, and today is September 11th, 2010. We're at the 398th Bomb Group Memorial Association reunion in Denver, Colorado. Would you please introduce yourself?
My name is James R. Haas. I'm a Bombardier on Harry Sleeman's crew. I was in the 603 Squadron.
All right, so where were you living and what were you doing as the war was getting started?
Well, after graduating from high school in 1940, I went to the University of Iowa for 1 year, and then the war came along, and a lot of my friends started to enlist in the service or inquire about it. So I was interested in first I was interested in the Navy Air Corps. I thought maybe the Air Corps. At those times, of course, airplanes were a novelty, and I'm quite interested in aviation, and I thought maybe I'd go in the Navy Air Force, but I ended up decided to enlist in the Army Air Corps, and but at that time they weren't taking too many. At that time, I had quite a long time, several months waiting to go into the service there, and I finally got called in, I don't know exactly, in 1943 I went in, and I enlisted in 42 but didn't go into 43 before they called me. And I went to, had to report to Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis, and was there for a short time, and then was sent to Morningside College. It was a new program that just started by the Air Corps. They'd taken over some of these small colleges and started a college program, and it was like a 90-day program, and I was sent to Morningside College in Sioux City, Iowa, and they'd taken over the women's dorm. We stayed in the women's dorm there, and while I was in Sioux City, we took 10 hours at pilot training in a small plane. And I guess maybe then they decided I would be a bombardier instead. I guess maybe I wouldn't make a good pilot anyway, so I was assigned to be a bombardier. And from Morningside College, I was sent to the Cadet Center in San Antonio, Texas. I was there for quite some time, and then sent to Houston, Texas for more schooling. And then from Houston, Texas, I went to Laredo, Texas, down on the Mexican border, and it's really hot. We were there in the summertime, and the fact is we couldn't go out in the afternoon. We laid in our bunks. It was so hot on the sand. There was mostly sand, and we had our training. It was in the morning, and we was there approximately, I think, probably a month or so, not too long, and then went to Midland, Texas, where I took my bombardier training. Went to bombardier school there. And I graduated in the day before Christmas in 1943. And then I got to go home for a short leave there, and then I went to Salt Lake City to a distribution center, waiting to be signed to our crew and oversee training. So one day we got the notice that I was going to Dalhart, Texas, which is in the Panhandle. In Texas, and that's where I met our crew, and we started our training there, and we were there several months in Dalhart, Texas, and then finally one day we got noticed that we were going overseas, and they told us when we left Dalhart, Texas, we were going on a troop train, and we were going by Kearney, Nebraska. There was an airfield at Kearney, Nebraska. And they said if there's a lot of planes on the field, we would fly over to England, and if not, then we'd go by ship. But when our troop train did arrive by Kearney, Nebraska, there was only about 3 airplanes on the field. So then we knew that we were going by ship. And we continued on the flight or the train up to Boston, and we spent just about 2 or 3 days in Boston, and then one day we were late in the day, we were taken by bus to the ship. And of course, this is during the Depression years, and I hadn't been out of practically Iowa. I lived in Perry, Iowa, which is a town of about 7,000. And I'd been in Chicago as a father, so I'd been away from home. And here I was, right up beside that big ship, SS Brazil, which the Navy taken over. And it was a very nice ship. We were very fortunate to be on this ship. And it was of course, they'd taken all the furniture out of the staterooms, and there were about 9 bunks in each room, and went there. But the enlisted men were down in the hold, and their quarters weren't so good. So fortunate. And we were very. Next day, we woke up and we were at sea, and we went out on deck, and it was a beautiful May day, perfect. And the Atlantic was very calm, and we were in a large convoy, and you practically couldn't see the end of from one end to the other. There was so many ships, and then the next morning we went out and woke up and went out on deck, and here was another convoy, another largest one we had at our convoy, joined us, and it was coming out of New York. Well, of course, we didn't know this, but of course they were sending supplies over to D-Day. Was very near, and of course, naturally we didn't know anything about it. But that was the reason why the 2 large convoys, and it was quite interesting because you see all these ships sending their signals back and forth, and we had destroyers running up and down the side of the convoy because kind of the German submarines to keep the submarines away, and we didn't encounter any trouble going over it, and we didn't hear of anything on the convoy. And the weather continued great all the way over. We had just wonderful weather, and every day to go out on the deck and enjoy the sunshine. We had really good food in the dining room. We had our own table. Each we were assigned to a table, and had white tablecloths out everywhere, and had a waiter. The same waiter all the way over, and we had a choice of a cup of food, and it was just wonderful. And enlisted men down below, their food was not very good, so we would save the fruit from our there and take them down and give them to them to tide them over till we got to England. But we had a wonderful trip over. Actually, it was a real nice trip over. And then we went to I call it a distribution center. Wait to be assigned to a group, and we were there on D-Day, and which is a big disappointment. We didn't get to fly on D-Day. I always wondered, that's one of my regrets, I didn't get to fly on D-Day. But we knew something was going on because all the planes had stripes on there. They painted stripes on all the Allied planes so they could distinguish them. So we saw a lot of planes in the air the day. In fact, I think our group flew 2 missions that day there, and so that was one of my disappointments. I didn't get to fly on D-Day. But soon we were sent to the 398th Bomb Group, and then we took we did several training flights in England, and then we finally one day we got to notice that we'd be flying the next day. And our first mission was on June 20th, and the first mission was to Hamburg. And so we got kind of off to a rough start because the flak was really intense there. And I think we were one of the last groups over the target, and by then the flak was pretty heavy, and we went up over the North Sea before we turned into the target. And when we turned in, we could see 2 or 3 B-17s going down there in flames, and I was already scared enough. I was really frightened, but we made it. We got through and got back, returned to our base, and glad that was over with. But we also then we got a notice that we were flying the next day. And the next got us up real early in the morning, either 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and go down to eat, and then go ready. and went into briefing and pulled back the curtain, and the target was Berlin. And what a start there. And we'd suffered quite a few of the group. I mean, didn't suffer so many losses, but the 8th Air Force had quite a heavy loss on Hamburg. And then Berlin wasn't going to be good. We knew that wasn't going to be good. And we got the target, and the word was that we had visual bombing, which was good. But when we got to the target, it wasn't visual targeting. The bad weather had set in, and radio back to us, and so we turned in the target, and couldn't see the target, so we set it on train, what they call train, where the bombs drop. We spread the bombs out. In other words, we didn't drop them all at once. They spread out across the city. So I don't know, and so I don't know what targets we hit or if we did anything there. But when the last bomb dropped, I said, "Bombs away! Let's go home." And it wasn't quite that kind of words, but let's go home. And just then the radio man called and said, "Jim, one of the bombs didn't drop." And oh no, I'm scared to death anyway. There, what am I going to do? So I had to get a portable oxygen tank, go back to the bomb bay, had to take my parachute off because the bomb bay doors were open and the wind would drag me out to the doors or something. So I had to take the chute off, and I had to stand on the walkway there, which is not very wide, and then put my other leg against the side of the plane. And there I was, 27,000 feet, standing up over the open bomb bay doors with no parachute. And I took a screwdriver and tripped the manual release. And fortunately, it did work, and the bomb released. And I immediately got back as quick as I could and get my chute back on and got back to my position. But that was, I still think about when nights I'm home and I don't sleep, I keep thinking about that. I want to keep thinking about that experience. That was a tremendous experience. And we completed the mission all right, and the 8th Air Force did suffer pretty heavy losses in those 2 missions. So when we got back and got on the ground again, I told the crew, I says, if we fly 35 missions like this, I said, there's no way we're going to get through this there, but it worked out all right. So the next few missions were, fortunately, the next 3 missions were pretty easy. They were over France, and they were shorter missions. And but on the 6th mission, we were scheduled to fly 2 missions that day. They were to France. They were short mission, and one was to on the coast of France, and one was going to be near Paris. I think some railroad yards near Paris. But on the first mission, which was to the coast of France, the Germans were sending buzz bombs over to London. And so we were going to bomb these installations where they were sending the bombs. And we were only about 17,000 feet. Normally most of our missions were 25,000 feet, but this was 17,000 feet. And fortunately, we were in the narrow part of the channel, and we got hit by flak. Our number 3 engine knocked our 3 engine out. And then, so we turned back over the channel, and number 2 engine went out. And we got toward the coast of England, and another engine went out. We were down to 1 engine, and we couldn't get north of London. Of course, north of London was a mass of airfields. Well, we couldn't, we had these balloons, the English had put up these balloons around London to try to stop these buzz bombs. And we couldn't get around those, so we had to go south of London, and we got down to 2,000 feet, and we couldn't find a place to land. And the pilot radioed, says, "You better bail out, because we can't find a place to land. You better get out while you can." So we were probably down about 1,800 feet, and I tried to open there's a door up by the Navigator, and the Bombardier has a door to get escape hatch to get out of there, and the door wouldn't open. I couldn't get a door open, and we're going down pretty fast. So I ran to the back of the door, and I didn't hesitate. I jumped. I thought, I better not stand there and look out. I better get a go while I can. And I ran and I jumped out, and I didn't pull my chute right away with the rip cord because I wanted to be sure and clear the tail. I didn't want to chute catching the tail. And my chute opened, and that was a wonderful feeling. It was a wonderful, but of course, I was so low, it didn't take long. The ground came up pretty fast. And when it was coming down, there was a large tree there. And I said, oh boy, and of course, I didn't know how to, we never had any experience jumping. And I was trying to guide my chute, trying to miss that tree. And I did miss it. I came down just beside it, and my chute, the bottom, caught in the bottom limbs. And I hit the ground awful hard. I felt like my ankles went up through my knees. Kind of stunned me a minute. And I sit there a minute and kind of looked around to see where I was, and looked over there, and there was a farmer sitting on the fence post sitting there, and he had a pitchfork. And I told him, I said, come on over and help me entangle my chute, get me out of here. And well, he wasn't about to come over. He didn't know if I was a German or American or English or who I was there. So I visited with him for a few minutes there, and I finally convinced him that I was American. And so he came over and helped me, got entangled, and he said, you go up to the house, my house is up there on the hillside there. He said, we saw you jump out, and my wife put the tea on, and so you go up there, and I'll go pick up the rest of them, because we were spread out there. And sure enough, he did. And the only one that got hurt was the tail gunner. When he hit, he broke his ankle, and had quite a time getting him back. But meanwhile, the plane got down pretty low, and all of a sudden the co-pilot spotted a small grass field. There were some small planes there, and so they didn't have any choice. They just had to land because they were running out of time and space. They were down real low. So they went in. There was a RAF had a small planes. They were going back and forth, recon outfit going back and forth across the channel. And so they went in wheels up and crash landed, and it turned out all right. They landed safely, and the pilot, the co-pilot, and the crew chief was there, and they're the three that stayed with the plane, went down to the plane, but none of them got hurt. Everything, they walked out of it. Yeah, incidentally, it's a brand new plane. We just got it, just more. All the other planes have been camouflaged, you know, they were painted camouflaged. And this was a nice, shiny new plane. And the crew chief was so proud of that plane, he said, now, we should bring that plane back, he says, there. And we got printing to do with it, we got things to do with it and everything. Unfortunately, the plane never did, I think they used it for parts or something. They did, and the next day they went down there, we went to this farmer, and the farmer called to this base where the plane landed, and they knew about this base course, and we called it back to the group, and they sent a truck down to pick us up and get to salvage as much as we could out of the plane, some of the things that are necessary. And so
were the bombs still on the plane?
No, we dropped the bombs. I dropped the bombs. No, we dropped the bombs. Yeah, just as we got here, I dropped the bombs, got rid of the bombs right away.
And were you over the channel?
Yes. So we might have gone, or we might have dropped them on the target. I don't know. It's questionable whether I dropped them on they were dropping them there. But, so it turned out all right. But we did lose a good plane, a nice brand new plane there. And then the missions went on. We've had, of course, and lots of experiences there. I was on the raid to my mission to Pinamuni. That's where up on the North Sea, that's where the German scientists were making these V bombs, and they were working, I guess, on the atom bomb. I guess they're working on that too. And they did all their work up there. They had where all the scientists were there doing that. And there was also a submarine base. Well, we went in, and it was nice because we went up on the North Sea because there was so we didn't run into any flak until we got to the target, and then of course we ran into a lot of flak there. But and we dropped our bombs, and turned back to sea and got back out over the sea and had a good mission. But we found out that our bombs had landed all in the circle in the bomb where we're supposed to, the bomb circle, and so we got a group citation for the perfect bombing we did on that day. But the bad news was on the submarine base, the bombs weren't the right size. They did little damage. They did no damage to the submarine base. So consequently, I had to go back and bomb it again a short time later. But I wasn't on that. We weren't flying that day. We were there. Didn't have to go back there. One other mission, we had bombed a target. I can't remember what it's called now, but it was a target in Germany. And we were coming home, and we'd been over the target and dropped our bombs, and coming home, and we did encounter the German fighters and everything, and we was going along pretty good. And the tail gunner, in the meantime, when we got over the target, the tail gunner got hit a minor flak. He said it wasn't. He got hit by a piece of flak come up and then hit him in the back, but he said it didn't do any damage. He said there. Well, we were coming home. The tail gunner, the co-pilot decided to go back and see how he was doing, see if he was all right and everything. Well, what he did, evidently he pulled the cord out of the pilot's oxygen there and mask, and he didn't know it. And so he'd gone back the tail. The pilot passed out, with no oxygen, and all of a sudden we started going down at a gradual, fortunately at a gradual. But there was 3 planes ahead of us, so we missed them and went on there. Well, the crew chief on the upper gunner, upper turret, he realized something was wrong. He jumped down, and then he saw right away that the pilot was passed out and nobody there. And so he ran down and pulled it up, and we got back in formation, and the co-pilot got back up there and was back. So that was just one of the many things that happened. Lots of things happened there. And then things, but we had a flak leave, and I think around our 22nd, after a 22nd mission, where we had a flak leave for a week, and we went up to Scotland and had a wonderful trip up there and enjoyed that. That was wonderful to get away and not have to fly for a few days, not have to worry about it. We could sleep in the morning and not have to worry. Enjoyed that. So then we were back and we started again and flying, and then on our 24th mission, the target was Ludwigshafen. It was a chemical plant on the Rhine River and the flak was one of the heaviest I'd seen during the war, and it was a ball of fire, and then the flak would burst, and the ball of fire, and it was just intense, and it just scared you to death. And all of a sudden, the plane next to us got a direct hit, blew up, and 9 boys died. They never knew what hit them. They just blew up. Well, the next person, the gunners had they knew that or something, and the next person come up is right in front of our number 3 engine, and they burst out in front, and hit their number 3 engine, knocked me back, hit me in the leg. I got flak, hit in the leg, knocked me back about 6 feet, knocked me back by the navigator there, and I was stunned. And of course, when that flak is red hot when it burst, and it burned my leg, but I looked up and I could see the other planes dropping their bombs, so I crawled back up and hit the switch and got rid of their bombs, and then crawled back, and the navigator gave me a shot of morphine there, and just then the pilot radioed, got on the radio, and he says, "Get ready to bail out. Our number 3 engine's on fire. Get ready to bail out." And one of the gunners said, "What are we going to do with Haas?" And they said, "Put his chute on and throw him out." So they put my chute on. They were getting ready to throw me out. And just then the pilot says, "We're going to hold it a minute. We're going to put it in a dive and see if we can't blow the fire out." And so we went into a dive, and I was enough awake that I could hear that. I'll never forget that sound. I swear the wings were going to come off. It was unbelievable sound. It's just unbelievable. We must have got, I don't know, I don't have any idea how far we drove down. Probably, I'd guess 10,000 feet or so. We went down and he pulled it out and it worked and it blew the fire out. But then the only thing is, of course, we were away from the formation then. And so we were lucky that no fighters hit us. They didn't hit us, and we escaped. We thought about landing in Paris when we got there because the ground troops had taken over just that week or so. They'd recaptured Paris, and of course all the rest of the crew, they said, "Let's land in Paris." They were thinking of having a good time. And I said, "No, we're going to keep going as long as we can stay in the air. We're going to keep going. We'll go to Belgium, and we can land in Belgium if we have to." So we kept going and got there, and the decision came to we go try to cross the channel, and they voted. They said, "Yeah, let's go try it." So they voted, and it worked all right. We did make it back to our base, and Colonel Hunter came out to the plane. Of course, they shot their things off, and they knew there's wounded aboard, and they came out and dressed put a bandage on my leg to temporary to go to the hospital, and then Colonel Hunter came out to the plane and gave me a few words of encouragement. He did real nice. I thought that was pretty nice. Anyway, they put me in an ambulance and they took me to the base and dressed my wound, and then took me to the main hospital, which is up near Cambridge. I think it was near Manningley. I think it was a large hospital there. And they wheeled me in, and it was a long hallway there, and they were double line of gurneys lined up. People had been wounded on the mission, and so they said, "You have to take your turn." And so they were taking there was two operating rooms, and they were operating, so they'd take two at a time, and dress my wound, and they sent a message to my parents that I was been seriously wounded on a, so scared them to death naturally, and so I did write to them right away and told them that I was all right. I was going to be all right. It'd be a while, but I was going to be all right. And I was pretty sick for about 3 or 4 days. They had me in intensive care there, and it was real uncomfortable. I was real.
And it was just from the burn on your leg?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I was in the hospital several weeks. I don't know exactly how long I was there. And so the pilot came up one day, and he said, "Why don't you see if you can't get out of the hospital, released out of the hospital, and get back to the base hospital, and they can dress your wound there." And he said, "We're finishing our missions, and you can go. Maybe you'll go home with us when we go home." So I said, "Okay." So I talked to the doctor, and he said, "All right, I'll release you and get back." So they released me to go back to the hospital, the base hospital there, and they said, "I'm sorry." No, he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "You got 11 more missions to fly." That's not the policy, and I had 11 more missions to fly, and I was pretty low. I was my crew was going home, and I was staying, and here I'm going to have to fly with another crew that I never met. I didn't know any of them there, and I was pretty low. And then they put 2 new crews in my hut there, and unbelievable. Both of them got killed on the same mission. One of them crashed on takeoff, and one of them got shot down over Germany. And so that was probably the lowest spot in my life. I was so low. I was really depressed. I didn't know what to do with it. But I was assigned to another crew, Ernie Spitzer's crew, and I don't know what happened to their Bombardier. I don't remember now what happened. Anyway, I was assigned to their crew, and we did have the last 11 missions I flew were a pretty rough mission. In fact, I was on the November 21st mission to Merseburg, and we were on the 603rd Squadron, was flying the high squadron that day, And we bombed Mercersburg, and when we turned off the target, the weather was closing in on us, and we got separated from the other 2 squadrons. Well, the German fighters were sitting up there above us watching, and they saw that we were separated from the rest of the group. They immediately attacked us, and they just slaughtered us. They put in, taken out the 50 caliber machine gun and put in 4 20mm cannons in their planes, and they came to head-on attack, and they just went through our group and just our squadron, and we lost, well, 7 shot down that day, and that for the target, and then 1 crew crash landed in Germany, or in I think around Belgium or somewhere before they got back, and then another crew finally made it back later on, but just 3 of us made it back, 3 planes there, and I was one of the lucky ones there, and so then I went on, and I only had one more. I had 24 missions, or 34 missions, and I had 1 more mission to fly, and then came the Battle of the Bulge, and of course we had bad weather. We'd sit there in the planes every day. They'd get us up. We'd go out and sit in the planes, and we knew we were going to fly. The fog was so thick, and we'd sit there, and they'd finally shoot a rocket up and said, "This mission's been scrubbed." And we'd go back, and finally on December the 24th, 1944, same thing happened. The only thing is, about noon, it started to clear up a little bit, just enough so that they said we could take off. So we did take off, and it was the weather wasn't good, but of course our ground troops were taking a terrible beating, and we were losing the Battle of the Bulge. We were taking off. We didn't have any air support, so we did support the troops, the ground troops there, and we came back, dropped our bombs, and came over the channel. And we came over the channel, we got the message to the radio that our base is closed in, and told us to land at any field you can. And so we picked out a field up in northern England, and we landed there. And we stayed there for several hours to call our base, and they said, well, we'll pick you up later on, and it'll be quite a while before we get up there. And we got back to her, they came and picked us up, and it was about, I think we got back to our base about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they took us in and gave us fixed us a sandwich or something to get fixed up. And the next day, it was, of course, Christmas Day in 1944, and that's when we had a wonderful meal, best meal we've had since we've been in England. It was wonderful, and of course, it was a wonderful Christmas present for me to finish. That was my 35th mission, and I knew I was going home, so that was quite an experience. And it was wonderful, wonderful, and I always remember that every Christmas there that year, and so we went home. And I stayed there for several days. I don't know how long I stayed there. It's sometime in the middle of January before I went home, and just the opposite. Of course, it was wintertime, and we went on the ship, and we left in a storm. And when we got out to Atlantic, it was the water, the waves were going over a boat, and the doors were locked. We couldn't. No one was allowed out on the deck there, and of course, and seasick. Oh, I was so seasick. I didn't care if I lived or died. After finishing all the mission, I can't get home. I said, let me die. I was so sick. He says, you got to eat. I said, eat? I can't get my head off a pillow. I'm so sick. And it went on, and that lasted about, I don't know, must have been about 4 or 5 days we were out there. And finally cleared up enough, and I got up, and we were down in the lower deck, or the main deck practically, because they'd used the upper deck. They were moved quite a few wounded. For people who got the Purple Heart thing, they were taking a lot of people back to the United States, and on hospital beds and things there. And in the whole of the ship was German prisoners. We had a lot of German prisoners. We were taking them over to the United States. And you can imagine how sick they were down there in the bottom of it. Oh, they were so sick there. But then they used some of them, the young ones, they were waited tables on us. They made them wait tables. And they looked like most of the young, they looked like they were about 15 or 16 years old. At the end of the war, of course, the Germans were using any man, you know, any young boy or man or anything they could get on. And so the rest of the trip was all right. The last 3 or 4 days was a real good trip. And we remember sailing into New York Harbor and going past the Statue of Liberty. That was quite a thrill there. And then we debarked in New York City, and they took us over to New Jersey. We went to a base in New Jersey and waited there a few days, and then they sent us back to St. Louis. And then I was supposed to get 30-day leave there, and I met my best friend, his sister, who I never dated really. We didn't ever date much, except I did take her to the senior prom the year I graduated, and so I mean we've been acquainted somewhat. Well, when I came back, I started dating her, and on the 30 days I was home. My parents lived in a apartment building, and lo and behold, one Saturday morning they had a fire in the basement. And the fire, it was a court in this apartment building. It was a court, open court there. And it got in the walls and went up, and it destroyed the building. We lost everything. Well, being an officer, I had all my orders, all my military papers. They gave them to me to take back to I was going to go to California, incidentally, after a 30-day leave. And all my orders burned up. And I had to call out to California and tell them, what do I do? I said, I lost all my orders. They burned up. And he said, oh, no, you're kidding. I said, no, I'm not kidding. It's the truth story. I said, I lost all my clothes, and except what I had on. I didn't have to go down. I had to go down and buy a toothbrush and comb and everything the next day. We moved into the hotel, temporary, to stay there at the hotel for a while. And so they said, well, we'll give you another 30-day leave. So I got another 30 days, so I had 60 days there. So in the 60 days, I married my girl, my sister's girlfriend, her sister, my boyfriend's sister, and we got married. And so we had a nice honeymoon. We went to Santa Monica, California, on the beach in Santa Monica. The Air Force had taken over 2 hotels that are right on the beach at the Northern Boy. That was beautiful and great. We stayed there for $1 a day, and she had to pay $1 a day. I got to, it didn't cost me anything there to stay there, and we got to tour Hollywood and get. So happened one of the ladies that in our town worked for one of the studios. She was a secretary to one, higher up in the studios, and so she invited us over to take a tour of the studios and meet some of the people there. And we got to do that. And we got to see some of the stars, and got to do that. You know, in those days, that was quite a thing. The movies were a big thing in those days, and we had a nice time. And some of the fellows that came home with England and came back same time I did, they lived in California, and they came out and picked us up several times and took us. We'd go out to eat or go to a show or go do things. And so we had a nice honeymoon on that. And then got sent over to Santa Ana, California, which is air base there, but no airplanes, just a kind of distribution center. And they called me in one day and told me I was going to be sent to Midland, Texas. That's where I had graduated from Bombardier school, and I was going back there and take training. I'm going to be in a B-29 and go to Santa Ana. I'd be ready to go sent to the South Pacific. And I said, oh, okay. So happened, my wife's brother was a pilot down in Midland, Texas. He flew Bombardier on their training flights there, and so we called him and find us an apartment or a place, a room or something. So we were coming down there for a while, and so they did. And it wasn't about a week later why they called me and they said, come into the office, we need to talk to you. I went in and they said, the Air Force has a new point system, and you've got enough points to be discharged if you so desire, or you can stay in. And at least if you are discharged, we want you to stay in the reserve. I said, no, just get me out. I've had enough. I'm ready to go home. And so we did, and we went back home. And I, after short time, why I went to work for. I decided not to go back. I was married, so I decided I needed a job. I did go back to school, which I wish I had, but I didn't. Anyway, I went to work for AC Spark Plug Company, which is a subsidiary of General Motors. And of course, during the war, they'd been making products for the war. They didn't make any spark plugs or things. There were very little there. And they wanted to introduce their new products. And I was supposed to be traveling about 3/4 of the state of Iowa, and I'd be home every weekend and then there. And but then they decided these products they wanted to display them. So they sent me I'd go to Wisconsin one week, and about the time to go home, they'd say, we're going to send you to North Dakota, and I want you to go up there for a week. And I go to north of there, and then I went on. And said, well, I said, after 3 weeks, you get to go home for a week or so. And well, I didn't. So I stayed with them about a year, but I didn't. I just got, I'd been gone from the service there, and just got married, and I didn't like that job. So I happened to one of the fellows in my that I went to church there. I go to church, and he owns a bank in Perry, and he'd been trying to get me to go work for the bank there, and I said, finally I said, I'll take him up on it. So I went to work for the bank. I thought, well, I'll be here for a short time until I decide what I'm going to do. And I ended up staying 40 years, and I ended up being senior vice president and trust officer at the bank, and enjoyed it, stay there. So and I've been retired now. I've been 23 years. So, and unfortunately, the only unfortunate thing, my wife got Alzheimer's, and which is a terrible, terrible disease. And I took care of her at home for about 3 years, and finally, my children said that's enough. That I couldn't do it anymore, and so they had to put her in a nursing home. And she was in a nursing home for 3 years before she passed away. And I used to go out to the nursing home every day at 3 o'clock. I'd go out and stay, and then I'd feed her supper, and I'd stay till they put her to bed every night. That went on for 3 years, and that's quite a bit. That's there, so I miss her terrible. I mean, I haven't got over it yet. I mean, it's been 2 years now. Yeah.
So what did you think about England?
Oh, I enjoyed England. We always, of course, first when we got over there, naturally we had to go to a pub or something, and said, oh no, we don't have any ice over here. We're going to have to drink this. Finally found something finding something we could drink and we enjoy, and so that turned out all right. I liked and enjoyed England. I wish my navigator, John Allaire, he did a lot of traveling. And whenever he had any time off, he'd do a lot of traveling. I wish I'd have gone with him and spent more time with him and did more traveling and seen more of England than I did. I enjoyed it. There was a real small town near Royston. I don't know exactly now what town it was. It was on the railroad there. My co-pilot and I would go over there and get on the train and go over there on the days off. And we just sit there and watch in the park and watch the fellow that had bowling on the grass. I don't know what they call it. But we just sit there and you felt away from the war. There wasn't a lot of people there with the military. He didn't hardly sound his heat in the uniform or anything. And the only thing was the planes flying over. And you just you felt like you were kind of away from the war. And we enjoyed that. We'd sit there and just enjoy the day and enjoy the little town. We enjoyed that very much. Of course, the 398, the base, I think we're probably the closest base to London. And so I did enjoy go to London. We spent a lot of time in London and did enjoy that. I did see quite a bit of London. Enjoyed that very much.
You just mostly do sightseeing when you went in?
Oh yes, we did a lot of sightseeing. Did that there. There. London was such a metropolitan. I mean, that's where practically all the Allied forces. You'd see them. Every country was there, and this one hotel where they'd taken over. We'd go in there for dining and drinking and dining. It was quite a sight. It's really something to see all those people from all the other countries, all the Allied countries there. Really enjoyed that very much.
Did you interact with the English people much?
Not too much. No, I didn't. I really didn't. There, I didn't. I wish I'd done more, but we didn't.
What was it like in your barracks?
Oh, pretty boring, really. We played a lot of poker at night. We'd sit there and play poker, and there. Other than that, spent a little time there. I don't remember the pub there, the Woodman's Pub. I don't remember that. Apparently, of course, we had an officers' club there, and we wanted to drink everything. So we could go over there, and so. Anyway, one other thing, one of the fellows from my town that I played basketball and football with, he was stationed at the 91st Bomb Group, which was on the other side of Royston, and he invited me over there once, twice, and that was a permanent RAF base at one time, and they turned it over to the 91st Bomb Group, and those were all brick buildings and fireplace in every room, and boy, I said, what a luxury. I said, we got these closet huts, and you get it 6 feet away from the stove, you're froze to death. And I said, boy, what a luxury this is. And so I meet him in town. We met quite often in Royston. We'd meet at a pub there in Royston, and we'd go there. And I did that. That worked out pretty good. Enjoyed that very much. And the trip to Scotland was really nice. Really enjoyed the people up there in Scotland. They were real friendly.
Where did you go in Scotland, do you remember?
Edinburgh, and we stayed there. We did a little sightseeing there. There's a castle right across from our hotel up on the hill there. There was a castle up there, and we went through the castle, and we did some sightseeing things down there. I think we enjoyed that very much. And
were you there? Do you remember the dances on the base? Did they have dances?
Oh yes, they had dances on the base. Yeah, they'd go in, get a carload of the girls and then bring them out. Yeah, enjoyed that. Yeah, we went to several dances there. That was good fun. And
So where in the plane did the Bombardier sit?
Right in the nose, the very nose. I was the first one over the target. Yeah, there's not much protection on that plexiglass there. So
And was it plexiglass underneath as well?
No, we went down to see the guns were there. There was a turret there. I was also, had 2 50 caliber machine guns, and there's a turret there with it there.
And do you remember shooting any?
Oh yes, I fired them, but I don't think I hit anything. Especially on that day of November 21st, when the fighters attacked us head on, and they went right through us. You could see the pilot it was so close that you could see the German faces. When they went by, they were right close. There and there. That was a day to remember. Terrible day in there. That was the biggest loss that the 603rd had. The 398. That was the biggest loss they ever had in one mission.
So you want to tell me about your crew members?
Well, unfortunately, they're all deceased now. I think the only one I know was alive was one of the ball turret gunner. My pilot was Harry Sleeman. He lived in Baltimore, Maryland, and he stayed in the service, and he went to Vietnam or Korea. I forget which one I wanted to see there, and John Allaire was the navigator, and he did come to several reunions. So I just spent some time with him. And he was quite a tennis player, and he liked to play tennis. And he retired to Florida. And one day he called me. He said he got to play tennis with Ted Williams, the baseball player, famous baseball player. He played tennis with him there. But unfortunately, one day he came back and he laid down after playing tennis. He lay down and had a heart attack and died. And he died. And our co-pilot, Sonny Waring, lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. And he and his wife were out in the backyard one day, and he just died of a heart attack. And he died at a younger age, a real young. He was there, and I had spent quite a bit of time with Sonny when we were in England. Why we were spent a lot of time together. I really enjoyed his company. Sorry to hear that. And Harry Sleeman also had heart trouble. He and his wife both had heart trouble, and they died several years ago. So I was the only officer left on the crew. Elwood Davis was the oldest member of our crew, and we enjoyed Elwood. He was about 10 years older than anyone else, and he lived in San Diego, California, did a lot of hunting and fishing, and kept himself in good shape. And he did come to several reunions, and he just died here just about in the last year and a half. So he lived a long life with hunting. He did a lot of hunting, so it paid off. Did a lot of walking in the mountains there. And we enjoyed him. He was good, and we stayed in contact. He and I had a lot. We'd visit back and forth, and we did a lot of that. Our crew went on the 8th Air Force used to have reunions, and which they still do. And but that time the groups didn't have it. Very few groups had reunions. Just the 8th Air Force. And the first one we went to was in Washington D.C. I think it was in around 1978. I think, and of course, Sleeman's lived right outside Washington D.C. They were there, and I think I was the only one, I think, besides the Sleemans were there. And then I think the following year or two later, they had a reunion. The 8th Air Force had a reunion in Houston, Texas, and quite a few of our crew was there. All the officers were, well, except Sonny Waring, he died. The rest of the 3 other officers were there, and Elwood Davis was there, and Kling was there. We lost contact with the radio man, Ioria. He was in the East. He was in Brooklyn or something, New York, and the pilot was never able to find him, any record of him. He never did locate him. And of course, we lost a tail gunner. He broke his ankle. He never did fly with us again. We had another tail gunner with us, really. And then, when we went to England, they had 10-man crews, and they had 2 waist gunners. And then they were losing too many men, and they decided they would one tail gunner, or one waist gunner. He could take care of either side, because the fighter was only going to attack from one side. So they really only needed 1 waist gunner, so they did away with 1 waist gunner. So then we cut our crew down to 9. And of course, when we first went over, they were flying 18 plane squadrons. And then, once again, in order to cut the losses down, they cut them down to 12. So then we started flying with 12 planes instead of 18 on the squadron, which cut their losses down considerably. That helped. We had more planes available. So the only one left I know is, the last I know was our ball turret gunner, Vernon Kling, who is possibly still alive. I talked to him here. He called me a few months ago. But I noticed in the flak news, the last flak news, his wife had a change of address, so I don't know whether he passed away or whether they got divorced or something. I don't know. So I'm going to have to contact him when I get home and see if hopefully he's still living. I don't know.
Did you carry any good luck items with you?
No. I'm superstitious, but I didn't have any. I didn't carry any items that day. Yeah.
So have you been back over to Nut Hempstead?
We went 1986. Went on we had a real good trip. We went to, of course, to London and to Cambridge, and their base spent there and had a wonderful time with the people there. And they threw a wonderful party. We had a big party out there at the barn, and had a dance, and it was really a great experience there. And then we went to France, and we went to the beaches of Normandy, which is really, really interesting. And of course, we had one of the small towns there, that St. Marie. There we had. We knew we were coming there, and they invited us there. It was a holiday, actually, a holiday over there that day. We were there, and the people of the small town, were coming out of the church. They had a service there that day, and they met us and invited us over to the city hall, and they had wine all poured for us, and different glad around a great big table, and they really treated us royally. We had a wonderful time there. It was a great experience. And then we went from there. We went into Paris, and we wish we'd had more time. We did a lot of traveling. That one day we were there. We were with a couple other crews members, and we did a lot of sightseeing. And one day we traveled a lot of ground. And it was a wonderful day. I wish we'd had more time in London and Paris, but we got to see quite a bit. Enjoyed it very much. That's the last time. That's the only time I would go back to there.
Have you been in a 17 since?
Yes, I've been. I haven't flown in a 17, but there's, of course, the aluminum gas comes to. Lots of times it come down to Des Moines, Iowa. Of course, we have the international airport there in Des Moines, and every so many years they come down there. And then there's another one. I think maybe. I don't know if it's, there's one in the Brookings Foundation on the East Coast that has one, and there was a plane there, a B-17 down in Des Moines not too long ago. I didn't get to come out this year, but usually I go, when there is one, I usually go down and you go through it and see it and visit it. So I've seen it several times. I've seen the B-17. I've been in it. My son had a nice experience. He lived in New Hampshire. And one time they were over on the coast, I don't know, Massachusetts somewhere, and on a vacation during the summer. And one Sunday morning he went down to get a newspaper, and going to there, looked over to this field, and there was a B-17 with this field there, and he couldn't believe it. He went over there, and there was this plane from I think the Brookings Foundation was there, and they were giving rides. And so he took a ride on the B-17, so he did get to ride the B-17, got to sit up there where the Bombardier is, there. So he enjoyed that.
Did the plane seem different to you than, from when you were in the war?
Well, yes. I mean, there was no bombs and no machine guns there, no shells or anything like that. A little different. And I can remember the first time I flew commercial, and it's kind of nice to get in the plane and not get shot at. You didn't have to keep looking for fighter planes. Yeah.
That's true.
I've been to several reunions, and I enjoy very much being there. I miss a lot of so many fellows. I got to be dues chairman for several years, got to be dues chairman, and I enjoyed that very much because I got to hear from all the people. It's nice to hear. I enjoyed it very much, but I'm glad Dawn's doing a nice job, and I had a visit with her today. I had a nice visit with her today, and
I'm good.
Yeah, enjoy it.
All right, and do you have anything else?
No, I enjoyed it very much. Had a nice time. I really enjoyed the trip to the Air Force Academy yesterday. That was really interesting, and it was a great day. I enjoyed that very much. Yeah. And the flyover, that was exciting. And to see the 4,000 cadets march, that's really impressive. And while we're there, it was another busload of people came up, and they got out, and I've never seen so many colonels in all my life. They were all colonels. They got out. There was a busload. They just kept coming and coming. There were a lot of them had ribbons, about 4 rows of ribbons on, and finally I couldn't stand anymore. I went over to one of them and I says, what group are you with? And he says, well, there's a football game here tomorrow. BYU is playing Saturday, which is today. Their Air Force is playing them today, and whenever there's a football game, they have a class reunion. And this was a 20th class reunion, and they were back for that. And I've never seen some. I saw more colonels than I did in World War II. In just an hour and a half, I've never seen so many. There were several there that had civilian clothes on. They didn't stay in the service, and they were there, and they were back at the reunion. But and when I was standing beside him when the Corps was marching, and he explained to me what reason they were doing this and all that, which was interesting. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're about finished, but I wanted to thank you for your service during World War II. I mean, we wouldn't have made it without you guys, so I want to thank you for that.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for everything you're doing.